Violence and lawlessness were running rampant yesterday in cities all across the country as Occupy protesters led anti-Wall Street demonstrations in honor of May Day. Now, in New York City, protesters were a distraction for the NYPD on the anniversary of Osama bin Laden's death. Now, instead of focusing all of their attention on protecting the city, they had to deal with scenes like this. But apparently, the selfish protesters, well, they just didn't seem to care. Now, meanwhile, guess who told ABC News that he was attending the gathering in Chicago? None other than the unrepentant terrorist Bill Ayers. Now, this should not come as a shock to anyone, since he has been quoted as saying that he is a huge supporter. And as more time goes on, the occupiers appear to be adopting the very same techniques that were used by the Weather Underground, which Bill Ayers helped found. As you know, the Weatherman Underground Group was responsible for a number of bombings at government buildings throughout the 1970s. And yesterday, the FBI charged 5 men, some of whom attended previous Occupy Cleveland rallies, with plotting to blow up a bridge in Ohio near a wealthy neighborhood. There's no longer a question that this is a left-wing movement seeking to inflict violence here in America.
We never left. We were just tired. I mean, anarchy isn't easy. This is a lot of work, and we had to hibernate for a while, but today we're resurging, and the energy's really good out in the streets. The problem here is capitalism. That's what needs to change. That's what's failing all these people. So I personally don't care about this election. I know other people are working on it, but I'm looking at far more radical alternatives than political alternatives. I'd like to actually see a new form of politics entirely.
And joining me now with reaction, Fox News political analyst Juan Williams, the author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, Culture of Corruption, Michelle Malkin. Juan, let me start. One of the problems here is that you have the seal of approval of the President of the United States, even though from the very beginning we saw a rape protective tent being set up for women in New York. We saw violence in a number of these movements. We saw, cursing of police officers, all these incidents. But the president and Nancy Pelosi praised the movement at the time. That's a problem for me. Is it a problem for you?
I don't think they're praising what you think they're praising, Sean. I don't think there's any support here from me. I don't think that I haven't heard much support from anybody for people who are, psychiatric cases, but specifically
No. But there was a lot of
terrorists.
if you have to set up a rape protection tent in Zuccotti Park,
Look,
and people are having sex and doing in public and doing drugs in public.
There are a bunch of kids in many cases, but I think that there's a lot of homeless people, as I said, a lot of psychiatric cases, a lot of troubled souls. I don't think that's the point of Occupy
And they were the ones
Wall
having
Street.
sex and doing drugs in public and taking a crap on a police car? Those are the guys?
Nobody.
No.
That's sad. That's pathetic. Nobody approves of that, and they should be put in jail.
Right. Imagine, Michelle, I'm going to show you 2 cuts here. This is one of Obama praising the Occupy movement and one of Nancy Pelosi saying, God bless them. Let's roll the tape.
I think it expresses the frustrations that the American people feel, that we had the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression. So yes, I think people are frustrated, and the protesters are giving voice to a more broad-based frustration about how our financial system works.
Well, the message of the protesters is a message for establishment every place. And God bless them for their spontaneity. It's an independent people coming. It's young, it's spontaneous, it's focused, and it's going to be effective.
It's violent, Michelle. There's been a law breaking. There's been confrontations with police, sex in public, drug use. All, God bless them.
Yeah. And let me correct Nancy Pelosi that there is nothing spontaneous about this organized chaos. And these occupiers and the Democrats behind them can no more disown the violent agitators than they can disown the stench that comes from these filthy encampments. From day one, from its very inception, the movement has intended to create chaos, and they have openly advocated smashing the state, wreaking havoc on our economy, and undermining the rule of law, and particularly the men and women on the front lines, those cops that have been attacked. Just over this past May Day demonstration and chaos and eruptions, of course, we've seen them dragged off of their bikes and demonized. And I think that the parallel you're drawing to the 60s and 70s is absolutely accurate. And it is no surprise, of course, because many of these same old, rusty, encrusted radicals are behind this movement. And I'd like to call
Michelle, can I make a point to you?
Yeah, but let me call you out first, Juan. But no.
Let me respond. Allow me to respond, Michelle. I just think, Michelle, that if you look at something like Tea Party movement, if I was on the show with Sean and I said, oh, but what about the racism in some parts of the Tea Party? Or what about the Tea Party person who brought a gun?
What racism?
Oh, gosh, you can talk about jokes about monkeys and the president. No, so, I mean, let's not, there's no question about that.
Name me one Tea Party person who said that.
And some people have been expelled from the Tea Party because of racism. And don't forget, no, I don't have to. Look, I'm telling you, not only that, members of Congress.
You're telling me the Tea Party people have called the president a monkey. Name me one Tea Party leader who has.
I don't remember the name, Michelle, but you can research it in an instant online, and I know you have that skill. And don't forget that the people were showing up and interrupting members of Congress, being rude to them. That's not the heart of the Tea Party, and I would never make that charge.
All right, hang on. One at a time, Michelle.
That's tantamount to calling for violence and killing cops and killing conservatives and Republicans?
Nobody who is really talking about fairness, which is the heart of the Occupy Wall Street movement, is talking about
that. That's all the president ever talks about, Juan.
That's
all he ever talks about.
Nobody supports that.
Wait a minute. These same kids that are there on their computers, the same kids that are destroying businesses that they didn't build and blaming and banks and the violence and the destruction and everything else that's happened here. But God bless them. That's what Nancy Pelosi said. God
they were
bless
both
them.
In the clips that you played, Sean, both Nancy Pelosi and President Obama were talking about people who were pointing out the unfairness that has become apparent as we have a larger and larger class divide in society.
Give me an example of the racism, and give me an example. Andrew Breitbart offered $100,000 for evidence that the congressman that you were talking about, if it's the same incident, to show any video evidence when there were 1 million cameras around. Do you have any evidence to prove that?
I don't have any evidence. Again, what we were talking about there was the kind of people drawing up pictures of monkeys and insulting the president, and nobody said, hey, that represents the heart of the Tea Party. Look,
no, they were called Nazis and racist regularly without any evidence. But let me give Michelle the last word because we got to roll.
Sure.
The takeaway quote from Juan is, I don't have any evidence, okay? Occupy Cleveland leaders are now being charged with a bridge bomb plot. Occupy Chicago leaders are under investigation by the FBI. Occupy leaders in L.A. and Denver and Oakland and San Francisco and Seattle and New York have been caught on tape advocating violence for the transformation of this society. There is absolutely no parallel between the peace-loving, tax-paying, hard-working people of the Tea Party movement and the anarchist, poo-flinging, Marxist monkeys of the Occupy movement.
We got to run, guys. I promise we'll have you back together. I'm not trying to cut you short. We're trying to be fair. All right, and coming up.